was like, and I turned after the congratulations from the knights on the field, turned and I said, who knew about this? And everybody raised their hand. I was like, you. You.
And it's a great nod to the whole idea of family.
Bienvenue. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, where we will discover the tales, trials, and talents of Renaissance Festival performers, merchants, and die-hard attendees as we journey by way of lighthearted and even at times heartwarming conversations about the Renaissance Festival world. I am your host, Theodore Jander, aka King Francois I. Bonjour. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, episode 16. I am your host, Theodore Jander. In this installment, you will share in my conversation with Maria Romine from Swords and Roses, a swashbuckling troupe described as a family-friendly, audience-interactive action-adventure experience. Audiences rave. This was a superb show, and as one of the parents said, a real treasure. I was so pleased with the amount of historical information that was intermingled with all the fun. Wonderful presentation. Great mix of entertainment and educational information. Needless to say, it was a delight finding out more about Swords and Roses and Maria's performing and Ren Faire journey. But before we jump into our conversation, a little coffee humor to start things brewing. So, what is a barista's favorite exercise? If you said the French press, you are correct. Well, now with that bit of Java jocularity perking up our ears, grab a cup of your favorite Joe, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Coffee Talk with King Francois I.
I am so happy to welcome my guest is Maria Romine, and you are a founder of Swords and Roses, correct?
That's right.
Outstanding. With it being a Renaissance Festival themed podcast, it's also Coffee Talk with King Francois I. A couple things. First, do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And as a coffee drinker, how do you prefer your coffee?
Okay. I like it ground. So especially ground because I like the smell of it. If I make it myself, then I realize that the bloom kind of goes off after that first time.
Okay.
Then I have it, if I have it in my coffee pot and I just pour it, I drink Highland grog. That is my absolute favorite style of coffee.
Okay.
I like the smell of it, and I butterscotch and rum,
There you go. Can't do it. Nope.
But then I don't put anything in it. I don't put any sugar, nothing. It's
okay.
From there on. And if I have to deal with other kinds of coffees, I'll drink it black.
Now, is Highland grog, is it a light, medium, or dark roast?
It's a medium.
Medium, okay. Okay, nice. Kind of even keeled. Yeah.
There's just,
nice.
I love the smell of it. It's just smooth.
There you go.
Festival, actually, when they used to have it in a coffee in the back of Fair, that's what they used to have. Terry Sofian used to bring it in.
Okay.
And he would say, you've got to try this. I'm like, oh, how good can it be? And I had my first cup. I was like, oh.
There you go.
Every time Renaissance Festival introduced me to Highland grog. I will never go back. Any coffee shop that has Highland grog.
Perfect. So when you go to a coffee shop, that's your go-to. I want to find out how good the coffee is. I want to have the Highland grog, and you're able to go nice.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I think I've had Highland grog before. I should try it black. When I first started drinking coffee, it was one of these things where I'm going to have some coffee with my sugar and creamer. And I slowly weaned myself off of that to really find a type of coffee, a specific kind of roast that would be a way to, okay, I'm going to go to this coffee shop. Okay, do you have this? Okay, well, that's going to be the tell or whatever. And right now, I tend to go for their standard coffee. I just go for a vanilla latte.
So you do their house?
Yeah, it'll be their house. And it's amazing, really, how different a vanilla latte can taste from one place to another.
That's funny. That's like I don't tend to do the houses, but I'm assuming they're all over as far as medium, strong, or do they tend to go with a medium or?
I would think most of them probably go with the medium. I mean, they are typically with the lattes. It's the espresso. It's not just a brewed coffee. It would have been an espresso of it, but you can get a Highland grog based latte, I would imagine. So you have it in the form. So the other question that I have regarding coffee is that if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Grace O'Malley.
Grace O'Malley.
Irish pirate queen.
Nice.
Is my hero. Every historical book I've read on her, I admire this woman. She lived to be in her 80s. She met with Elizabeth I because one of her governors had arrested Grace O'Malley's son, Tobin, of the ship. And so Grace went into Elizabeth I's court and said, I want my son. And the two had a private conference. After the one-to-one, Tobin was let free, and Grace kind of was a privateer for England.
Oh, wow.
She's a fabulous, fabulous woman. I would sit on her TED Talk on leadership.
There you go.
I would definitely have coffee with a woman.
And I would imagine it would be Highland grog.
Highland grog, or possibly Irish coffee with a little Baileys.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So in some of the chatting that we've done already, your initial start into the Renaissance Festival was with the Greater St. Louis Renaissance Festival. Now, was that your first Ren Faire involvement?
So I had my first Renaissance Festival that I actually went and attended was Bristol's with Kenosha, Wisconsin's.
Okay.
Well, the Bristol Renaissance Festival. It really blew me away. And then I think I attended that. And then the next year, there was an announcement that St. Louis was going to have one. And I could have heard of this. I was so excited. And so I went to the first auditions, and I auditioned as a storyteller. I wanted to be hired as a storyteller because I had been doing storytelling as a freelance, and I actually had made a name for myself at Christmas traditions doing.
Oh, nice.
So I thought, this is the next level, you know? So I auditioned and was hired as a storyteller. My sister went because she had attended Bristol with me, and she was hired to be on court as Diane de Poitiers.
Yep.
So yeah, the rest is history. We helped from the very beginning with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival. I was surprised, and I'm amazed that they didn't give me a little strike against me, but I said, oh, I'm so excited. I saw the one in Bristol, and they're like, yeah, we're going to have a French one. And I said, French?
It is something that's I'm not going to say it's unheard of because obviously, well, the Greater St. Louis Renaissance Festival and Fair having been French, but most of them are English based. It does create quite a unique character to the festival itself. So.
And a challenge for the cats because I have a great English accent.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a terrible French accent after all these years. So I had to really work on it and still do. And it was a stint for all of us going in. So
I would imagine most of the people that I remember encountering when I first joined in the second year, a lot of them had the French accent, but most of the festival that I had been to, I had been to Bristol as well, and Kansas City's Renaissance Festival, again, English. I had performed in Kansas City when I was in college. We had the British accent kind of thing going, and that was something normal. I think there are a lot of even European based or historical movies that are supposed to be French take place in France, but the majority of the people have English accents. I think early on that was something that the majority of the cast really worked on. I mean, because not only did we have French, but we did have English. We did have we had Germans. We had some Scots. We also had what are now called the travelers. So you had the Romani language, but French was definitely the big one. It added to the ambiance of what a Renaissance festival is. So having been to Bristol and kind of having a jaw-dropping experience when you go there, and it literally is like walking into the past. And then the St. Louis Renaissance, the Greater St. Louis Renaissance Fair, as it was originally known, was that just a continuation of your love for Renaissance festivals, or really was it Bristol? Or was there something prior to Renaissance festivals that drew you to them, if that makes sense?
It does. I would say Bristol made me fall in love with Renaissance festivals.
Okay.
And I kept going. And I really got caught up in their storylines that they had. And I kind of, when we started doing St. Louis, that was in my head the vision of what we could be.
Okay.
And it's a joy to hear now when people come across the bridge in St. Louis that they feel like they're stepping back in time.
Right.
Because they go right to the woods. And it wasn't always that way. When they used to walk across the bridge, there was a tent there. So it was early on, it was a tent fair with a wooden pub stage that acted as there were a few wooden stages.
Mm-hmm.
Field. The fairies were at the bottom of the hill, and the Boy Scouts had made a zip line for jousting.
Right. I vaguely remember seeing that. I had attended that first year because I had some college classmates who were part of it. But it's grown.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has absolutely grown. To now be a part of it and go into or just go into the lanes now, and the lanes are full. It's what the dream was always, I think, to be.
Right.
I love the multiple stages and the variety of stage acts. It really has become what I thought or had a dream. It's definitely a different flavor than Bristol, but it has its own unique flavor, and it's something we can be proud of. For being.
Absolutely. When you consider the sheer number of Renaissance festivals that are in the United States, I would say they would each have their own unique flavor, even though you might have a lot of them that you go to one Renaissance festival and there's Henry VIII, you can go to another one and there's Henry VIII. But maybe it's Henry VIII it depends on which one of his 6 wives he was with. And that changes it up enough where you have Elizabeth, or you have Mary, or Edward, or even before Henry VIII, you go into the King Richard, you go to the Robin Hood era, a lot of that type of stuff. And each one it draws people into history, into stories. And you had mentioned that your initial entry into the St. Louis Renaissance Festival was as a storyteller. And so is that something that you continue to do then? In
a different way.
Okay.
Every once in a blue moon, I get hired to be a storyteller, but I do comedy improv. So that background in doing storytelling for some of the things that we do for comedy improv, there's things called rant, or there's actually a storytelling game that we'll play.
Oh, okay.
That background helps me, but I am hired for my speaking.
Nice.
So that background in storytelling and that idea of how to engage an audience and always be open. And I guess I'm a dangerous performer. And the Renaissance Festival is definitely what opened that door. Because when as a storyteller, I interacted with the audience, but I noticed that even the stage act would interact with the audience. There was no fourth wall.
Right.
Because I have a Bachelor of Arts in Theater.
Okay.
When I first saw that they, too, could break through that fourth wall, I was like, oh, this is on.
Right. And that's one of the beauties of Renaissance festivals is that for those farmers, even for the merchants, for the cast, for patrons, there is this interaction between everyone. You're walking into history. You're participating in everything. So yeah, to see how others not ignored, but broke down that wall or just it didn't even exist. We're like, yes, you're my audience, but you're also part of the show.
And some of the folks get really into it. And there's times where, okay, we have to really wrap up, be mindful of things. It's a lot of fun to play with the audience, especially if they're good things, you go for it.
Absolutely.
In our case with Swords and Roses, we're usually building up to 2 fights that happen throughout our shows.
Okay.
3 fights, because the audience does vote on what ending they'd like to see. So they are egging us on to get to that fight.
So speaking of Swords and Roses, you started out with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival as a storyteller, and essentially you were, and my introduction to you when I came onto the cast was that you were also essentially the dance mistress, that you were the one that taught dance. Now, do you have a background in dance in some form?
Oh, well, so that's a funny story. The entertainment director that year, I guess she was the co-entertainment director, knew that I was taking English country dancing from a master. And she knew my sister and I were doing it. And she said, hey, I want the court to do more than just the little dance that I taught them, that she was in a production of Cinderella. So that one year. And she says, I want more. And I said, well, I knew English country dancing. That looked, some parts, we don't really know how old some of these dances are. Some of them are built around songs. We definitely know how old they are, and they're named after that song. Others, you can almost imagine, and I think why the Society of Creative Anachronism definitely latches onto some of these is you could see peasants doing certain circle dances because it's something that peasants could do.
Right.
And then a gal of mine that I ended up getting into a lot of different dance circles, so to speak, where they break dancing and more folk type dancing. What's interesting, and it makes sense, dancing is storytelling just with your body.
Right.
So I noticed some similar patterns. Maybe it would be to a different song, but similar patterns in the step crossover, step kick. That's used in not only what we were doing in English country dancing or folk dancing, SCA. So I am responsible for a lot of that.
Okay. Well, it's definitely something that I would imagine you experience going to really any Renaissance festivals. I would say it's some form of Renaissance line dancing.
Line dancing came from English country dancing. The reason they were lines was because the hallways where these balls were held were very long. So they would design their dances for these long hallways.
Nice. That totally makes sense. And you mentioned too about the dances that peasants would be able to do in those small circles. So you can have a very large group. You can have a big circle, or if you end up with just a smaller group, you can have a small circle, but it's something that everyone can potentially participate in, much like what Renaissance festivals have become too, is that it's become a place where anyone is welcome. And from whether it's a patron, people who are interested in becoming cast, performers, merchants, and such. And so you yourself, having started out as a storyteller, being involved with the dance that helped to teach the cast and whatnot, how did that then form into what you do now with Swords and Roses as a performer in the Renaissance Festival world?
It's choreography still, and it's telling a story just in a different way.
Okay.
Rapiers and daggers, but then we do have a script and a song, so we haven't really left that world. And Susan, my sister, who was my original partner for we were both the dance mistresses. I learned the guys part because I'm taller, and I also learned that all the intricate footwork that happened with guys I could remember easier. And then she liked to do the swirly stuff. That tends to be what the dances are for the girls. So going from that into Swords and Roses, it's really it's kind of funny that it's actually an extension of the dancing. Now because all our captains are very swirly twirly.
Okay. And
that was started from Susan, but the people that end up being cast as captain tend to be the kind of people that swirl and twirl.
So then what is it that Swords and Roses does as a performance troupe, if you will?
So as a performance troupe, we are all female, and we have a captain and a first mate, and we are always, the storyline is very, the reason we fight, and this was on purpose, the reason we fight is always a heightened, ridiculous reason to fight. We wanted a legitimate reason to fight. Even though we love violence and we say violence, we don't want to encourage it. I'll get into that in a minute. We also sing at least one song that kind of forwards the intent of the script. And then we have another song where it encourages people to vote. Our show is one that has two endings.
Oh.
does choose what ending they see, and we joke, but it's also how it is done. We take our tips at that point, so they vote who they want to see, and that's when we get our tips. And then whoever has the most tips wins that bout, and we have two endings, honestly, and sometimes a secret third.
Oh, nice. And like you described, when it comes to choreography, when it comes to sword fighting, when it comes to being on stage, you're taking a lot of that experience that you had with dancing, with storytelling. And like you said, choreography, dance is storytelling with movement. And so you're pulling all of those pieces together with this Swords and Roses, with this performance. And how long has Swords and Roses been in existence?
We've been in existence since January 6th of 2000.
Since 2000?
Since 2000. So we
really
here on the stage of St. Louis until we put a few shows underneath our belts, just kind of getting audience input. Where we're going. So I would call them sample audiences, getting kind of a feel for it before we hopped on.
So you've been going 22 years strong with that then. Okay. What is it that you do in addition to Swords and Roses, or is that a primary part of what you do as an actress?
I wish it was. I am terrible about really taking care of my own business, but it's because I tend to try other things. So I end up taking care of myself as an actress and that business. But sometimes I don't take care of Swords and Roses like I should. And in some ways I was very thankful when COVID happened, even though I was doing a lot for Swords and Roses and it was really gaining momentum. I think it will still have that potential, but I feel like I do a lot. I do improv comedy. I do we had science shows, so I bring fun and entertainment of science to kids. I have my own one-woman shows, a couple of those. So I public speak. So Swords and Roses is kind of this side that I'm very proud of. And it's basically getting it back up to where it was before. I had touring shows going for Swords and Roses that were actually, we were getting very consistent, like monthly touring shows. We had a theater that we were working out of on Main Street.
Nice.
Yeah. So we were starting to do a show every Sunday afternoon at the theater. We were sharing it with Comedy Sports St. Louis, and I give them a plug because they were like, hey, we'll charge you rent, and this is what it would be. And I was like, sweet. So it was a really great opportunity. I have an academy, and I know we'll probably talk about that at the time. So still doing those things, but just or not the theater per se. We're still getting bookings, but it's not anywhere where it was before. I mean,
right, yeah.
So like all my cylinders were just busting, and I was like, we're gonna take it to the next level. And it was our anniversary year. But we pivoted and we did stuff online.
Yeah.
So we still made it.
Terrific. I would think that obviously COVID impacted a ridiculous impacted the world, and then those in the performing arts too. And then how do you make an adjustment, and how has it changed? And you even said it that you pivoted. You were able to take what you were doing in live theater and bring it online. Yes, it's a very different experience, but you still have the opportunity to tell stories, to connect with people, to provide people entertainment. And that's a big part of what you do and have been doing for quite a long time. And so would it be safe to say that your involvement with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival helped to nurture everything that you're doing now?
I would absolutely say so, yes.
Okay.
I felt it was definitely the place where I started to grow as a performer and realizing how audiences work, how to read the audience, and the fact I could play with the audience really helped me grow. And it really has influenced where I am today.
You never really think about that going into the Renaissance Festival. I mean, obviously, as a patron, you go in and take in all the sights and sounds, and you're in history, and to realize there are going to be new people on cast, there are going to be new merchants, there are going to be new performers or young, still starting performers, and to realize really what a great platform, if you will, Renaissance Festival is for people who want to try something. It's a way to learn. It's a very welcoming environment. A lot of the people that I've come to know in the past 22 years of being involved with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival is realizing how welcoming, how family oriented the festival world is. And it's not just each individual festival. It's you experience that kind of energy at any Renaissance Festival in particular. And that's such a unique thing. And to be a part of that and to continue to be a part of that and for that to have had its impact on what you've done and what you do now it's a cool thing because you're able to carry on doing that and you have an opportunity with the performing that you do now to share that experience with younger people who are wanting to go into theater, who wanting to become performers. So that actually brings up a great question. So for someone who would be considering being a vendor or in your case as an actor or even attending a Renaissance Festival, what is at least one piece of advice that you could offer?
So as a performer, I would say you want to go in with it is a lot of fun, but it's a lot of hard work. I think that's the other thing is we make it look like so much fun. They don't see the hard work that goes behind it or how physical it is. It's very physical. So I am very picky with who goes on fair, and especially with the St. Louis Fair, with it having a lot of rocks and hills. And I'm like, you have to be able to walk on rocks and there'll be bees and or yellow jackets at a certain time.
Right.
But it could be hot. I try to kind of actually discourage them because if they still want to go for it, it's like, okay, this person gets that it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But it's boot camp for actresses. If you can do Renaissance Festival, you can tour. Touring is nothing compared to the Renaissance Festival. You may have to bring your own gear and whatnot, but Renaissance Festival is hot, it's cold. There's all sorts of elements that you encounter, but it is the most rewarding thing as a performer because the audience is so appreciative that you're out there doing what you do. Performing in the heat, the cold, whatever. They're like, they kind of watch to see, well, what are you going to do? It's raining. We're going to fight because you came to see us fight. We're going to fight very slowly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Make a point of saying, obviously we're going to give you a show and just realize this is going to look a little on the slow side, but you could use your imaginations and speed it up and replay, fun of it. But
yeah, you're right. It's with it being not only theater in the round, it's theater where you are literally engaging with the audience, where you are talking with the audience, where you're able to walk up and have a conversation with the audience and share an experience, create an experience with a patron. But it's more than that. Like you said, you're dealing with the elements and the heat and the cold. I don't know how many times in the past 20 some years I've been asked, you must be really hot in that outfit. And they're not wrong. I mean, it is an adjustment. I mean, it does take work. It's not like you can just show up and put on a pretty costume and run around and interact with people. For people who are extremely extroverted, I'm sure that would be probably far easier for them to do, to be able to just walk up to anybody. But you're also a character, so you have to take that in consideration too, that you are portraying, even whether they're historical or fiction, you're still a character. So there's having that dynamic to it, and it takes work to prepare that and to get the body up and going to walking around. The St. Louis Renaissance Festival has hills in all directions, but it's a beautiful setting to be set in the woods. And there are a lot of other Renaissance festivals that are as well. They're set in the woods, or they may have more open areas too. And it varies, but regardless, you're walking. Unless you happen to be, I'd say even if you were one of the knights jousting, that might not necessarily, I don't know how many of them are walking their horses around, because when you have that many people in the lanes, in the shows, it can be difficult to travel around, but that's the great joy of being a performer, being a merchant, being a cast member, being a patron, someone who comes very often, who comes in, whether it's Renaissance garb, whether it's someone dressed from the Star Trek universe, the Star Wars universe, the Marvel universe, the video games, when you're talking about Assassin's Creed, I mean, all of those things, all of that plays into what you as a performer do on stage, because it allows you then the opportunity to engage with them. They're brought into the show.
Oh, absolutely.
So
when you have a barbarian that's just excited.
Right.
It's fabulous. And yeah, so if anything, if it's your first time going to a festival, just realize you are going to see people that really love it.
Mm-hmm.
They dress up, and they might be in the hottest costume and it's 102 degrees, but they're just embracing that because they're loving it so much. But for a performer, it really is a challenge, and I think if you want to take it seriously, it's a great place to be really get the chops for a performer, because you also have to be in character all the time that you're in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
All the time you're with the public, you are on. So it's not like you're, off on the side. Oh, there's my line. I come in, I do my little thing, and I leave. Oh,
mm-hmm.
And it's talk about improv. If you're playing a historical person, you have those people that really love history, and they come up to you and they're asking you these historical.
Yep.
You're just hoping I have the right information.
Right. Yes. Oh yeah.
Fun.
I would say that is one of the differences between being a performer on stage. In essence, even though you are interacting, you've created these characters. So most of the stage performers aren't necessarily historical figures. They're mostly made up, fitting the time, for sure. But at the same time, I would say as a performer, you're also aware of the history of the era, because you're playing to that.
Yes, and I mean we have done another fair, and my first question out of my mouth was, what time period? Who's in charge? What's the monarch? What's the political strategy? And that helps, because we as performers want to play with that.
Okay. Yeah.
We want to plug into that. Because it just helps. You're helping everybody else buy in. If you're managing the royalty, then that helps. Or if you're aware of the friction that may be between certain of state, that is
right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival in particular, since I want to say 2014 or 15, I think it was 2014, that we've had the French and the English court. We've had Francois I and Henry VIII. And so that tension that existed, even though it's a festival day, we're having a big party, but yet there are always these little jabs towards one another, to each other's countries, and that plays out for the patrons and for the audience as they take it all in.
Yeah. History stuff, they really they really geek out on that. They're like,
oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. So you had mentioned something, and it was something that I had seen on the Swords and Roses website, for an academy for stage combat. Now, is that something that you had foreseen when you originally conceived the idea for Swords and Roses, or was that something that developed? Is it still going? What's it entail?
That's a really good question. It was in my plan for Swords and Roses. So when I actually, it's so, you go to these little things to help prompt you into being a better leader, person, whatnot. And it was like, draw up what your vision is, your business or life or whatever.
Right.
So I did one for my life, and I did one for my business, or Swords and Roses. And at the time, Susan was on board with that as well. But it was touring. It was having a theater, and it was having an academy. So that was always there. Swords and Roses, one of the reasons I was passionate about starting it was I wanted to give, and it was one of those things where I wanted it to grow so that we'd have to bring in more actresses. I saw as an actress how hard it is to get roles or get jobs. For every play, there was like 20 actresses auditioning for two roles, and maybe 10 guys for 5 roles.
Yeah.
the things were really stacked unevenly. I think things are getting better slowly, but that was the reason that I wanted to continue with Swords and Roses. So when Susan wanted to start stepping back and having a family, it was finally that kick in the pants. Well, if you've been wanting to grow it all this time, so, that's what happened. So then the academy has always been on the periphery, and we have taught workshops throughout before Susan kind of retired, and then the academy. It was one of those things. This friend of mine was a Olympic coach, their coach, and it was always our joke and always our dream. Hey, we should really go in together and create an academy. And he actually got a space, and he reached out the day he got the space. He says, "Hey, Maria, you know that dream we had?" He said, "How about it?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And we had it on the days that it was Thursdays that he didn't need it all at all. So that was our day, so I could offer classes at night. I could have it all throughout the day because he has a day job. And I could have it up until about 6 o'clock any of the other days. And it was fabulous. But again, with COVID, that all crashing.
Right.
Actually ended up because this style of fencing doesn't require you to be in each other's face. You're wearing face masks and you already are 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually grew during COVID. He was able to buy a new space and get it bigger. And he was like, "I wish I could bring you back." And I said, "Well, it's just not meant to be. If it's not meant to be, I'm not going to force it." What happened and how the academy is kind of still surviving at this point, and I have in mind now that things are kind of settling down for me to start looking at space. I've had people hire me to teach them.
Oh, brilliant.
I go to their home.
Brilliant.
And I'm like a personal trainer. But I have been hired a lot this past year. It's just been very fun. But a lot of couples have wanted to add sword fighting to their wedding reception.
Oh, interesting.
I'm a wedding reception choreographer.
Wow.
So you start.
That's pretty cool.
As a couple, and then all of a sudden swords come out and things get crazy.
Is that something that's more common from people who've attended Renaissance festivals, that kind of thing? Or is this, do you have people who hire you to do that who've not ever set foot at a Renaissance festival?
I think that they have found us because of the Renaissance festival.
Okay.
I think so. Or they've seen us. I remember the last couple I worked with, they had seen us a long time ago at the Renaissance Festival, and they're like, "Hey, you're still around." It was one of those all around.
Right. Yeah. Nice.
Still here. We're still kicking.
Well, which is great because ultimately you've made a connection. You've provided an experience for someone if they've seen you perform. And so along those lines, as performers or as a performer, whether it was in your earlier years with storytelling or working with the dance aspect with the cast for the St. Louis Renaissance Festival or with Swords and Roses, do you have a major singular memory that you cherish, or do you have several stories or memories that either impacted you or in some ways impacted the patron or whomever?
Because I think we're all female, we tend to have little girls latch on to us. And what has been cool and also very real for me is how these young ladies have grown up, gotten married, and now bringing their children to see our show. And it's so old. But also, I mean, one of our girls from Swords and Roses, she was 2 years old when she saw Susan and I perform. She would bring her mom and dad would take turns bringing her to the fair, and her friend. They learned our song, and I got to know one of them was very involved. Actually, both of them were very involved in SCA. So I knew the parents, I knew the girls, and I kept joking about an internship. But then when they got to be 16, I thought, why not? Let's have an intern program.
Oh, sweet. I
have every once in a while interns come in and they learn the ropes, and they also take pictures of our group. And if they like it, if they like what they see and have a calling for it, when they turn 18, they can become a full-fledged Swords and Roses lady. So one of my
Wow.
is the 2-year-old girl. Audience knew all our songs. It's so funny. I joke and said the first time I said, "So do we need to go over the Mud Dance song?" And she's like, "No, I got it."
Nice.
I got it. It hasn't changed in 22 years. We're good. But yeah, she's one of my gals that performs at the Renaissance Festival.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's cool. It's obviously it does make one feel older when they have someone who they performed for when that person was very young, and then for them to have grown up and then to be at the age to be able to perform themselves and perform with you. I think that's a great testament to the impact that you had on her in particular.
Yeah, I didn't realize what a big deal that was. I mean, to me, I was kind of like, "Oh, this is so neat." I was almost like doing the mom thing, but her mom was out doing the mom thing, taking tons of. And I didn't realize for her she said it was really. She said, "I don't honestly remember that first day of working with you because I just every time I kept on coming out stage, I was like, this is real, like." This it was just very surreal. And I said, I hadn't even thought about that. It was like that whole full circle thing coming. So yeah.
Cool.
Amazing. Lots of girls coming up and I have a weird memory. I used really good. Like if you introduced yourself to me once, I would know who you were. But now I'm my old age is showing.
I get that too. Yeah.
I can't quite do it but I used to be able to, or I wouldn't even have to shake your hand. There was a guy I auditioned for, and then after I auditioned for him, I said, "I've seen you before." I said, "Did you come out to the Renaissance Festival?" He's like, "Yes." I said, "Do you have a red-haired daughter who may have wore pink that day with a cardinal?" And he's like, yes, we were there.
Wow.
I said, certain people I could just, boom, I know where you are, and I knew where I'd seen them, and that's gone now. But also, St. Louis has another memory, and that is my husband proposed at the Renaissance Festival.
Beautiful.
My friend who was the entertainment director, she said, "Oh my gosh, one of the ladies of the court, they had this whole thing planned." And
nice.
And you know how people are about missed that completely. I was doing my storytelling, and the entertainment director comes up. She goes, "Oh, one of our gals, she has to leave, and she's the king's mistress. You've got to take over." But my boyfriend's here, and his parents had come down because it was Memorial Weekend, so that he had warned them, "I'm going to propose to her. I hope you like her." So I put on the king's mistress outfit, and I'm flirting with the king, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, his parents must hate me. Oh my gosh, But I just played it up, and then after the joust ended, I was arrested for impersonating the king's mistress, and we had just had the jail built. This thing of arresting friends to do it.
Yep.
I was like furious. I'm like, I have made a fool of myself in front of these wonderful people that are my boyfriend's parents, and now I'm arrested so I can be carted off to jail. I was like furious. I couldn't wait to find out who had done this to me. And then James came out, and he knelt before Sam, who I know was Francois that year. I think you, Francois Jander, the And he said, "Your Majesty, if you will forgive this woman, I'd like to ask for her hand in marriage." And I was like, "What?"
Nice. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that's so cool. Well, and to not know it's coming, and to have everyone else who obviously, well, not everyone, but a lot of people who have known it was coming, and yeah. Go ahead.
And I was like, and then I turned after the congratulations from the knights on the field, and I said, "Who knew about this?" And everybody raised their hand. I was like, "You."
Yeah.
You.
And it's a great nod to the whole idea of family, to be able to have an experience like that. You and now your husband, obviously, that you were a part of his family, and it wasn't just obviously his parents or your parents or just your sister. You were able to participate in this great event with this really ginormous family, and what a great memory for you and for you and him and for your family as well. So that's really fantastic. So as this is a Renaissance Festival oriented podcast, one in particular question that I want to ask, and since you've been around the Renaissance Festival for a while and you've seen jesters come and go, who would win in a joust, you or the royal jester, and why?
I think it could be a draw. And the only reason I say that is I would have them on skill. So I could unhorse them with skill.
Okay.
Or if I was unhorsing them and they said a joke that was really funny, I would fall off just from laughter. So I worked that in one time with our show. My sister disarmed me by saying just a ridiculous joke. And I fell over with laughter and she disarmed me.
That's great. So a lot of it would depend on, in your case, it would be skill, but then the juster's skill with bad jokes. And
bad jokes.
There you go. As we draw this coffee talk with King Francois I to a close, do want to provide some insight into how folks can find you. So at which festivals can you be found? And as I've mentioned, your website, you obviously are available on the internet. Where on the internet can you be found?
Sure. So you can find us at swordsandroses.com, but you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Swords and Roses. I make sure our logo's out there, so it's cross swords with 3 roses.
Nice.
And, there's a superimposed pirate skull within those roses. And you can find us at Instagram, Facebook. We are on Twitter. I haven't really said that in a long time.
Okay.
That's our main thing. But yeah.
Nice. And as far as festivals go, is St. Louis Renaissance Festival the only festival you do?
We have done White Heart, which is in Ava, Missouri, but we haven't. It's hit or miss whether we do them. We've done some county fairs, so you just kind of look for us. I do want to expand our Renaissance Festival reach now that I feel like we have the right team to expand. I'm ready to expand in the fair world much further than I have. I tend to go for the easy catch. If they call me and say, we want you, it's much easier.
Right. No, I completely understand that.
So there's some festivals I have in mind that Texas, I'd like to reach out to Texas and see.
Sweet.
They have a lot of them and I have family out there. So
perfect. That'd be great.
I would love to definitely perform at other festivals.
Yeah. I do want to thank you, Maria, for taking some time out of your day to have this lovely conversation on Coffee Talk with King Francois. And do want to, again, thank you and wish you many blessings on your craft.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
You the same for this. I think you're doing a wonderful thing. And you're encouraging storytelling to continue, Ted.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I do hope you enjoyed this episode with my guest, Maria Romine of Swords and Roses. To find out more about this swashbuckling troupe, check out their links in the show notes. Be on the lookout for the next episode to be released on Friday, May 5th, where I bring you my conversation with Samantha and Taylor Kreitz. If you are a performer, merchant, staff, or diehard patron in or of the Renaissance Festival world and would like to be featured on Coffee Talk with King Francois I, reach out to me by way of clicking on the following link provided in the show notes: www.theodorejander.com/Coffee Talk Podcast. Would you like to receive early access every other week to each new episode, as well as receive a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the production and creative process for the podcast? If so, join the wonderful community of listeners supporting the show and making new things possible through Patreon. Learn more at www.patreon.com/Coffee Talk with King Francois. The link will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee Talk with King Francois I. A bientôt. See you soon. Ciao for now and au revoir.